The most dangerous voice in your life may be your own. The person you need protection from may not be the person who criticizes you, rejects you, or tries to control you. It may be the voice inside your own mind. The voice that says you are not good enough before anyone else has said a word. The voice that turns one mistake into proof that you are a failure. And the most dangerous thing about this voice is that it does not sound like an enemy. It sounds like you. By the end of this video, you will understand why the person you need protection from may be the voice inside your own mind. You will learn how to recognize that voice, separate it from who you really are, and stop letting it decide what you are capable of. But first, we need to answer a difficult question. If this voice is hurting you, why did your mind create it in the first place? Because in many cases, it was not created to destroy you. It was created to protect you. Imagine a child who makes a mistake in front of other people. Maybe the class laughs. Maybe a parent looks disappointed. Maybe no one says anything cruel, but the child feels the sudden withdrawal of warmth. The child does not yet have the language to say, "I made a mistake, and mistakes are uncomfortable, but they do not define me." Instead, the mind learns a simpler rule. Mistakes are dangerous. Being unprepared is dangerous. Letting people see your weakness is dangerous. So the mind develops a strategy. It begins watching you, correcting you, warning you, and eventually attacking you before anyone else can. The logic is painful, but it makes sense. If I criticize myself first, no one can surprise me. If I expect rejection, rejection will hurt less. If I never believe I am good enough, perhaps I will keep improving. This is why the inner critic can feel so responsible. It does not always sound emotional. Sometimes it sounds intelligent. It says, "Be realistic. Do not embarrass yourself. You are not ready. Other people are better than you. You need to work harder before you deserve to be seen." And because the voice often uses the language of discipline, you may mistake it for wisdom. But discipline and self-attack are not the same thing. Discipline says, "You were not prepared. Prepare better next time." The inner critic says, "You are not prepared because you are lazy, weak, and incapable." Discipline focuses on the action. The inner critic turns the action into an identity. That difference matters because you can correct an action. But when you believe the problem is who you are, there is nowhere to go. You cannot improve your way out of an identity that keeps moving the standard. You finish one task, and the voice points to the next. You achieve something difficult, and the voice says it was luck. Someone praises you, and the voice tells you they do not really know you. The inner critic does not simply ask you to succeed. It makes success emotionally impossible to receive. And this is where protection becomes dangerous. The voice began by trying to prevent shame, but now it creates shame before anything has happened. It began by trying to prepare you for rejection, but now it makes you reject yourself in advance. It began by trying to protect you from failure, but eventually it may stop you from attempting anything that could expose you. That is the hidden cost of the voice. It does not only make you feel bad, it changes what you are willing to do. You may call it caution. You may call it perfectionism. You may even call it knowing your limits. But sometimes what looks like self-awareness is fear that has been speaking for so long that you no longer recognize its voice. And that leads to a more difficult question. How much of your life has been shaped not by what you truly wanted, but by what this voice was afraid would happen? How much of your life has been shaped not by what you truly wanted, but by what this voice was afraid would happen? Think about the opportunities you did not take, the question you did not ask, the idea you never shared, the person you wanted to speak to, but did not. You may have told yourself that you were being realistic, but listen closely to the language behind that decision. You will look foolish. They will realize you do not belong here. You are not ready yet. Wait until you are more confident. The voice rarely says, "I am afraid." Instead, it says, "This is a bad idea." That is one reason it is so convincing. Fear becomes much harder to recognize when it presents itself as a conclusion. And this is the first way to protect yourself from it. Do not immediately believe the sentence. First, identify the speaker. The next time your mind says, "You are going to fail," pause and change the sentence slightly. Say, "My inner critic is telling me that I am going to fail." That may sound like a small difference. It is not. "You are going to fail" sounds like reality. "My inner critic is telling me that I am going to fail" sounds like information coming from one part of your mind. You have created distance. The voice is still there. But now, there is also someone listening to it, and that listener is you. This is the beginning of separation. Not silence, not positive thinking. Separation. You are not trying to prove that the voice is completely wrong. You are simply refusing to let it speak as the whole truth. This matters because your inner critic usually makes 3 moves so quickly that you do not notice them. First, something happens. You make a mistake. Someone does not reply. A person looks distracted while you are speaking. Then the voice adds a meaning. They are disappointed in you. You sounded stupid. They no longer respect you. And finally, it turns that meaning into an identity. You always ruin things. You are not interesting. You are not the kind of person people respect. An event becomes an interpretation. The interpretation becomes a judgment. And the judgment becomes you. All of this can happen in seconds. So when you hear the voice, ask 3 simple questions. What actually happened? What meaning did the voice add? And what did it make that event mean about me? For example, what actually happened? Someone did not reply to your message. What meaning did the voice add? They are deliberately ignoring me. What did it make that mean about you? I am not important. Now you can see what the voice has done. The silence was real, but the rejection was an interpretation, and the judgment about your worth was another step beyond that. This does not mean your interpretation is always wrong. Sometimes people do reject you. Sometimes criticism is accurate. Sometimes you really do need to change your behavior. Protecting yourself from your inner critic does not mean becoming blind to reality. It means refusing to turn incomplete evidence into a complete verdict about who you are. A healthy mind can say, "I may have handled that badly." The inner critic says, "This proves what you have always been." A healthy mind allows new evidence. The inner critic has already reached its conclusion. And once you believe that conclusion, it begins making decisions for you. You avoid speaking because the voice says you have nothing valuable to say. You avoid applying because the voice says rejection would expose the truth about you. You tolerate disrespect because the voice says this may be the best treatment you deserve. You keep preparing, studying, editing, and waiting, not because the work still needs improvement, but because finishing would mean allowing yourself to be judged. This is how the voice protects you. It reduces the risk of visible failure by keeping you invisible. But a life without visible failure is often also a life without full participation. The voice says, "I am keeping you safe." But safety from embarrassment can become isolation. Safety from rejection can become loneliness. Safety from failure can become a life you never fully enter. And this is where the question changes. The question is no longer, how can I make this voice stop? The deeper question is, what has obeying this voice already cost me? What has obeying this voice already cost you? Maybe more than an opportunity. Maybe it has shaped the person you believe you are. The inner critic becomes powerful through repetition. A sentence heard once is only a thought. A sentence heard for years begins to feel like a fact. You are not confident. You are difficult to love. You are not someone who succeeds. At first, these are judgments. Then they become expectations. You enter a room expecting to be ignored. You begin a project expecting to fail. And when anything goes wrong, the voice says, "See, I told you." But when something goes well, it changes the rules. You succeeded because you were lucky. Someone likes you because they do not really know you. The voice treats failure as proof. It treats success as an exception. That is why it sounds convincing. It is not showing you your whole life. It is showing you an edited version. Imagine that you forget someone's name. The moment lasts 5 seconds. But later, your mind brings it back. Then it finds another awkward memory, and another. Soon, you are no longer thinking, "I forgot a name." You are thinking, "I have always been socially awkward." One event becomes a history. The history becomes an identity. But the voice leaves things out. It ignores the conversations that went well. It ignores the times people enjoyed being with you. It selects the memories that support an old conclusion. This voice may also carry words you learned long ago, from a parent, a teacher, or someone who once made you feel small. The original speaker may disappear, but the message remains. Eventually, it begins speaking in the first person. I am not good enough. So listen for absolute language. I always fail. No one respects me. I will never change. Real reflection is specific. The inner critic is total. It turns one mistake into a permanent definition. When that happens, change the sentence. Do not say, "I am a failure." Say, "I am having the thought that I am a failure." There is the thought. And there is the person noticing it. They are not the same. You can hear a judgment without becoming it. This is not avoiding responsibility. It makes responsibility possible. "I am hopeless" gives you nowhere to go. "I avoided this because I feared being judged" gives you something you can change. An identity traps you. A behavior gives you a beginning. The voice may know your fears. It may know your history. But knowing you is not the same as being you. The goal is not to silence every negative thought. It is to stop treating every thought as a verdict. The voice may still speak, but what happens next can become your decision. So how do you respond without fighting it, obeying it, or pretending it is not there? So how do you respond without fighting the voice, obeying it, or pretending it is not there? Start by recognizing it. When the voice says, "You are going to fail," do not answer immediately. Pause. Say, "My inner critic is speaking." This creates distance. The thought is inside you, but it is not the whole of you. Next, ask, what is this voice trying to protect me from? Maybe it is protecting you from embarrassment, rejection, disappointment, or the feeling of not being good enough. The voice may be harsh, but underneath the harshness, there is often fear. You do not need to hate that fear. You need to understand it. Then separate the warning from the judgment. The warning may say, "This could go badly." The judgment says, "If it goes badly, it proves you are worthless." Those are not the same thing. One is a possibility. The other is a sentence against your identity. You can accept the possibility without accepting the sentence. You can say, "Yes, I may fail. Yes, someone may judge me. Yes, this may be uncomfortable. But none of those things gets to define who I am. Then make one small decision that the voice would not make. Send the message. Ask the question. Share the idea. Apply for the opportunity. Do not wait until the voice becomes silent. It may not become silent. Courage does not begin when fear disappears. It begins when fear is no longer making the decision. Remember the mistake from the beginning of this video. The awkward sentence. The message with an error. The moment your mind immediately said, "You always ruin everything." Now you can respond differently. You can say, "I made a mistake. I feel embarrassed. My inner critic is trying to turn this moment into a judgment about my entire life. But this is one event. It is not my identity." Then correct what you can. Apologize if necessary. Learn what needs to be learned. And continue. That is the difference between responsibility and self-punishment. Responsibility helps you move forward. Self-punishment keeps you trapped in the moment. The most dangerous voice in your life may be your own, because it knows your deepest fears. It knows your memories. It knows exactly which words will hurt. But the voice is not powerful because it always tells the truth. It is powerful because you have learned to treat it as the final authority. It is not. A voice inside you is still only one part of you. You are also the person who can notice it, question it, understand it, and choose differently. Protecting yourself from your own voice does not mean fighting yourself. It means protecting your life from the part of you that mistakes fear for wisdom, cruelty for discipline, and shame for motivation. The voice may still speak, but it no longer gets the final word.